So you're tuned into the Grapevine Talk, where we bring real conversations, real context, and real resources to the community. Today's discussion is one that many of our listeners have been waiting for. So across Austin and Central Texas, fear and uncertainty about immigration and customs enforcement have been weighing heavily on families, especially in the Hispanic community. That's why today we're joined by Councilwoman Vanessa Fuentes, who represents District 2 community and has been directly involved in conversations around public safety, immigration concerns, and residents' rights. So on the Grapevine, we don't just deal with rumors and panic.
That's right.
We deal in facts. Today, we'll break down the ICE can and cannot do's, how police are instructed to respond, and what rights residents and protesters have, and what steps to take if your rights are violated. So this conversation is meant to inform, empower, and calm, and serve as a resource for families, students, allies, and anybody seeking clarity.
Okay, and before we begin, just a quick disclaimer. This conversation is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Laws and individuals and situations may vary. Please consult a qualified attorney for legal guidance. Any views and opinions expressed are solely those of each speaker and not of any employer, agency, and or organization to which they are affiliated.
Awesome. So we're going to set the ground truth. And we're going to start with Ms. Fuentes.
Yes.
All right, so let's get into it. So many families are extremely anxious right now. So let's start with the basics. Fear is high in the Hispanic community. What is actually happening in our city and when it comes to ICE and the activity going on?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you all for creating the space for us to talk about this issue head on, because it is a reality. And I feel like we're not talking about it enough, as at least from an elected leader standpoint here in our community, to really acknowledge the fear, the confusion that many, especially in our immigrant community, are facing. And we're seeing it show up in our community in a variety of ways. You know, I have a friend who owns a small business. She's a legal resident. She was telling me that she doesn't even travel anymore throughout the city. She takes Ubers, prefers not to drive herself out of fear of being pulled over and being detained. When I was meeting with one of my staff members over lunch, the waiter overheard our conversation around immigration and very quietly told us, you know, one of my colleagues was detained and hasn't showed up. It's been 2 weeks. What can we do? And so what we're seeing here locally compared to throughout the nation, we are seeing what happened in Minneapolis, right? And what happened to Renee Good and Alex Preddy, and just the deaths of American citizens who were helping their immigrant neighbors. It was just uncruel and unjust. It was cruel and unjust. And in Austin, their approach is different here because we are a red state, whereas the Trump administration is really targeting kind of blue states, blue cities.
So what rumors or misinformation should residents not panic over?
Yeah, because we're panicking over a lot of stuff right now. So if you can try to limit our panic of what is actually truth and not in this space, that'd be fantastic.
Yes. Well, okay. So probably what's top of mind for everyone right now is what is our local law enforcement's role with ICE? And what was really important to me and my colleagues, Councilmember Velasquez and Mayor Pro Tem Vela, is that we convene a conversation with our APD police chief, Lisa Davis, to talk through what does that look like for Austin police. And what she affirmed is that our local police are not proactively working or cooperating with ICE. And that is important to know. So we're not, going out of our way. Local police are not going out of their way to bring in ICE. We did have a horrific incident that happened last month in our city where an individual called for help and was later deported as a result. And there was an outcry over it. And obviously and rightfully so. And so we really had to dig into this new type of administrative warrant, which is basically a wannabe warrant. It's not a criminal judicial warrant. It doesn't necessitate or require a specific type of action. And so that's where we kind of had to dig a little bit deeper. So the question on everyone's mind is, can an individual call 911? Is it safe to call local police? And, and talking with the police chief, she affirmed that, yes, we do want people to feel safe calling 911. She's updating her general orders to kind of go through specific procedures around the administrative warrants. And we're also talking about, how can we better connect our immigrant neighbors directly to victim services within APD, a safer passage.
And for some of our listeners who may not know, what is ICE legally able to do and legally not able to do when interacting with residents and constituents?
I know.
It's a hard one.
Well, I can talk through on paper what they can do, but what we're seeing play out in communities across the nation is a little bit different. But what's important for today's conversation is to really affirm for everyone listening that you have rights. You have constitutional rights that need to be protected and deserve to be protected. And there are things that you can do should you find yourself in a situation where you are having a direct interaction with an ICE agent. First and foremost, you have the right to remain silent. You do not need to have a conversation or disclose information if this individual does not have a judicial warrant. And there's a distinction there on what that is.
Yeah, and can we get into that, what the distinction is between the judicial warrant and the administrative warrant, so we can know what the difference is?
Right. A judicial warrant is signed by a judge that authorizes and allows ICE to go into homes and to detain that individual, versus an administrative warrant is really this new thing that the Trump administration has pushed out to the background check system that law enforcement use. And so now they have access to this new information that doesn't legally mean anything. So that's where a lot of the questions and confusions really arose from.
So if someone has ICE knocking at their door, right? How do they know the difference between an administrative warrant and a judicial warrant at that moment, or would they know?
A judicial warrant is a signed piece of paper, and we want individuals to be vigilant and looking at that warrant, because there's also fake judicial warrants, meaning that it's not completely filled out. It has to be signed by a judge. It has to have, their name on it. They have to verify that is the individual. And if ICE comes to your door, you should ask for a copy of that judicial warrant. You can ask them to slide it underneath the door. You don't have to open it. You need to verify that it's legit.
Right.
Because we have seen situations where ICE comes in and they say we have a judicial warrant, and it's not. It's an ICE warrant. It's not signed by a judge. And so there are distinctions there.
Yeah. And for people not, in their homes, ICE knocks on door, but if they're on the streets, what is the information that they're legally required to provide, and what can they refuse to answer?
Right. So they can ask the individual detaining them, am I being detained?
That's a good one.
Right. First, you want to understand, am I being detained? Because how ICE responds can vary, and they need to have a probable cause, a reason for the detainment, right? So they have to either witness a criminal activity or have a judicial warrant. And if they don't have that, then you can say, am I free to go? And then you can calmly walk away. And we certainly, what I think is important for anyone that's having interactions is to document. If you are witnessing this happen to another individual, document, get footage, because we all need to be helpful to one another.
Good advice.
And so, but also emphasizing the first one that you said earlier is you have a right to stay silent. So you don't have to say anything. You don't have to interact at all. In the event that, they ask you questions, you don't have a requirement to respond. You can keep it moving.
That's right.
And so that's in the case of even identifying yourself, because I know for PD, certain things do have to be answered. That's completely separate and apart from ICE. You don't even have to, answer who you are or identify yourself.
You don't have to. You can remain silent. You can ask for a lawyer. Now, you might be in a situation, and I'm not a lawyer, but you might be in a situation where ICE will detain you because you're refusing to respond. At which case, I think then it's a matter of an unconstitutional action by a federal agent, and then we have a case.
Okay.
And so let your lawyer handle it from there.
Yes.
Please, let your lawyer handle it from there. So can ICE enter someone's home without permission?
No.
Oh.
No. First of all, the individual has to give them permission to enter, and they need a warrant to enter. Now, sometimes and I know, especially for the Latino community, there's a sense, a culture of deference to law enforcement. So even if you get someone knocking on your door and you see they have a badge, they look official, and they're saying, hey, can I come in? Your instinct might be, yeah, come on in. Like, let's talk this through. But we need people to know they need to ask, do they have a judicial warrant, and verify that there is documentation associated with it.
So Southern hospitality might not work in your favor for this.
No, not
right?
this one. Not this one.
There's not the opportunity to bring them in for sweet tea and talk about it, right? Okay.
How is local police instructed to interact with ICE, especially during raids, traffic stops, or protests? And where is that line drawn?
That's a really good question. And that's an area where we want to get very, very clear on. So the police chief is updating the general orders. And I know just hours ago, we finally got a copy of the draft of the general orders. So I know. Breaking news here. So we'll be digging through that through the next few days to ensure that it is at the level that we feel comfortable with and values aligned. But what we do know from Senate Bill 4 from 2017, there has to be a sense of cooperation between local law enforcement and ICE should ICE request it. And so ICE can sometimes ask APD to come secure a scene, or, to be available to protect the bystanders who are witnessing, an incident or activity. What we don't want, and what is very important to us, is that our local law enforcement are not proactively working with ICE. Right. There's a distinction there. Our local officers, they're not federal enforcement agents. We do not need them doing federal immigration law enforcement. We need them keeping our community safe. So,
especially with that shortage, right? Like, we have some problems of our own that aren't necessarily locking up our neighbors.
Right. And so going back, it seems like the city's stance on ICE is that we're not cooperating here in the city of Austin, and that we are more focused on the community and the people here and ensuring that they are safe and that they're not at risk.
What is those exact words? Cooperating? It was affirmatively...
Proactively.
What was that last one? Proactively cooperate?
Okay. So for residents that are worried about the 911, like you spoke of earlier, how should they... feel in reporting crime or seeking help from 911. You did discuss a little while ago about someone here in the city that dialed 911 and ended up being detained. So what are the steps that you feel people should take right now when calling 911 and interacting with police in these instances?
Well, I want people to feel safe calling 911. That is important to me. I believe the number one responsibility of government is keeping people safe, keeping our community safe. And, what we're ensuring is also offering additional other safe pathways for people. So connecting individuals who are victims, who are going through a domestic violence situation, having them connected more directly to APD victim services. These are individuals who are primed and ready to help in times of emergency. And so that way we give them another lifeline to receive help. And that's something that we're working on right now. With APD, what's important in ensuring that there is that safety is acknowledging that because of SB4, we can't explicitly prevent law enforcement from contacting ICE, but we can ensure that there are significant protocols in the event that we have individual officers who choose to do so.
Right.
So, for example, in that GOs, what I'm going to be looking at is there the necessary levels of if a police officer is going to contact ICE, they have to get approval from their commander. They have to write a report so that we can all see the documentation of why did they decide to bring them in. And so we want to really have high thresholds for if in the event that should happen. But ultimately, we want people to feel safe calling 911.
Right.
And talking about feeling safe, what would you tell constituents about feeling safe when they do want to peacefully protest what ICE is doing, right? We've seen these protests across the nation. What would you tell your listeners, your constituents, about how they make their voice heard and stay safe at the same time?
Yes. Well, I'm a firm believer in our First Amendment
Come
rights.
on, while we still have it, honey.
Yes. So it's important that people participate, that you make your voice heard, that you denounce what is happening from our federal government and what they are subjecting our communities to. And so in being safe, what's important is that we know our rights, that we know, and we have little red cards available for anyone who needs them. We have them at our office and all of our public libraries.
Okay.
So this is a little handy dandy rights info sheet. But with that, knowing that, there are some ways that you can be safe while protesting. So certainly go with a buddy, have a witness on hand to document everything. It should be that second eyewitness should anything go awry. And then also know that what we know with APD is that they are working proactively with organizers of protests. So they are doing some coordination to keep safety of the individuals. And then, of course, we don't want anyone to, if they see that the situation is escalating, that they, calmly kind of walk away or remove themselves from any type of escalating activity.
Right. And then can I add a couple of things
Yes.
to that? I think I'm getting it off of your website and your materials. So thank you to your team also for getting that information out here to us. But also you don't need a permit. So if you're breaking news protests, so you can protest or march on sidewalks and streets without a permit if you don't block traffic or building entrances. Like you were saying, and I'm not going to go deep into what you've already covered, but you can record what you see. If your rights are violated, like you just said, write down what happened, but also get the names and take pictures of injuries when it's safe. If, of course, the police stop you, like we've said over and over again on this conversation, ask, am I free to go? If it's yes, calmly walk away. If you are arrested, ask why. Say what you want. Say what you want to stay silent and that you want a lawyer. Do not sign or agree to anything without a lawyer. Let me say that
Please.
again. Do not sign or agree to anything without a lawyer. So if military or law enforcement does question you, you do still have the right to remain silent, and you only answer questions with a lawyer present. And this is true no matter what your immigration status is.
Yeah, and I've been to a protest a time or two in my life. So I really like a go bag, right? Like those essential things, making sure you're hydrated, making sure you have snacks, but also like making sure you have solvent in case there are tear gas, right? Making sure that you have the scarf in case, projectiles or smoke or fog. So there are things that you can do to prepare at home prior to getting there, as well as writing a number down, hopefully for your attorney, on your arm in Sharpie, right? If you get locked up, you don't necessarily have your phone handy dandy to get to that lawyer. So making sure that you have everything like locked in place and following that same game can also be really beneficial.
Because one thing that's clear is that while we have strict kind of procedures and protocols on Austin police, we often see, since we are the capital city, that we have DPS, our state troopers. These are state police who have the tear gas, who have different types of crowd control measures. So know that there might be different law enforcement agencies in the mix.
Great
so
point.
Just out of curiosity, at a protest, have you seen any specific behavior that increases the risk for people that are out there protesting, that they might be engaged with either ICE or APD in some capacity during those protests?
I mean, I think with any protests, you might have agitators and who engage in those type of activities. And I think, when that happens, there are, the situations escalate. And so really, I think it's important that if an individual is there, they're peacefully protesting, they're doing what is protected constitutionally, and they witness agitation, the best thing is to calmly walk away and remove yourself from that situation.
And then with the kids protesting, with the walkouts, do you have any advice for them as they are doing their walkouts and protesting their First Amendment rights as well? So just any advice for them as they are, utilizing their voices?
Well, I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing that we have kids who are participating in our democracy, who are actively exercising their constitutional rights. For our kids, what we saw just recently with the ISD walkouts, that we know that they were protected. They had teachers with them. They had their police department with the school district also escorted them. So it was done in a very safe way. And I really hate to see our state leaders really weaponize that, what is, again, a constitutional right for their own political gain. And but more power to the kids, are the future of our country.
They gave me inspiration. I was like, there's hope. There's hope.
And one other question, as a parent, and having our kids engage in the walkouts, do you recommend that the kids wear masks or anything like that to conceal their identities? Because a lot of kids and parents are worried about, the kids growing up and having videos of a protest or anything like that could, be used against them for college applications. And we've seen people, in the midst of that. So as a parent, my child is going to the protest today. And so I told her to wear a mask and things of that nature. Yeah. So is that something
you bring up a good point. I mean, I think everyone's going to have a different comfort level with that, but you're right that in this digital age and knowing that we are in a surveillance state and that the Trump administration is very all about surveillance, I would be very careful.
Right.
Talking about being careful while we're out there on the streets, whether you're a kiddo or an adult, if local police are on the same scene during ICE, during, an action or a protest, because we've heard, right, we're not affirmatively, proactively cooperating, right? But proactively cooperating is different, I would say, than serving and protecting, right? So if local PD is on that scene with ICE and things start getting a little tense, who is holding them accountable when it comes to potential violations of rights?
That's a good question. And that topic came up at a town hall that we hosted last week. And what our police chief said and affirmed is that just like we have, so here in Austin, we have the Office of Austin Police Oversight. So any officer is able to report anonymously any type of wrongdoing that they see a fellow colleague, a fellow officer do.
Okay.
And the same would hold true if an Austin police officer sees an ICE agent conduct federal overreach, have misconduct, do something that is in violation. They will also have the ability to report as well. And we want to encourage that.
Definitely.
Because a lot of these ICE agents, they're not trained to the same level like our law enforcement. They're not held to the same standards. ICE doesn't have oversight and accountability. I mean, they are truly running around masked, and so they can get away with a lot more, and we're seeing them get away with a lot more. But what we want our local Austin police officers know, and what me as a policymaker will be digging into moving forward, is ensuring that Austin police know that they can report misconduct from ICE agents. And what we should feel safe as a community knowing is that even our district attorney, Jose Garza, has also publicly committed to prosecuting federal ICE agents for any type of overreach or misconduct.
Fantastic. And what would you tell someone if their rights are they believe their rights are actively being violated? What do they do? Who do they call? What's that immediate response for the individual?
Yes, it's Austin Police Oversight. They can call the complaint hotline, 512-972-2676. You can file a formal complaint, or you can do a report anonymously. So, back to what we were saying earlier about documentation, if you can get names, grab the names, having some type of footage available, all of that will be helpful, but know that people can report.
And then closing things out and going back and making sure the community that, of course, this conversation was to make sure that people aren't living in fear. And I know we've talked about a lot of things so far that are causing the panic in the community. And what is something that you want the community to hear directly from city leadership today to put them at peace and to bring that calm to them?
And what do you personally do to protect your peace while there is absolute chaos on our streets?
Oh, well, we can have a whole other conversation on that, on what I need to be doing. No, but I think here's the thing for me, especially for the Latino community, is really understanding what they need right now in this moment. We have seen even in our own distribution events that we have in Dove Springs, like the attendance levels are down. People truly, when we say people don't feel safe coming out. Like, that is a real thing. Even in my neighborhood Facebook group, we had a pregnant woman who is undocumented who is asking a neighbor to go pick up her groceries.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So these are real stories of things that are happening to Austinites, and that is very valid. So what I would say to our Latino community and our immigrant community is to say that we hear you, we understand what is happening, and we're doing what we can to best support our immigrant neighbors. And, I feel very compelled that the city of Austin should be doing more. And we need to really double down on our resources and our protections. And so I'm working through conversations with colleagues on what that might look like.
And so the community doesn't stop with just the Hispanic constituents. So for our allies, we have our Black, Asian, white, faith-based, and other community members. What does real helpful support look like right now beyond just social media posts?
That's a great question.
Yes. Well, I will say right now in Congress, they're deciding around ICE funding. In fact, I think their deadline to vote on the reauthorization of the funding for ICE is Friday. So certainly call your U.S. Senator and your Congress people and voice your concerns around funding ICE. I mean, we know that the last time they funded ICE, it was at the expense of Medicaid. So there are significant trade-offs to fund this very rogue agency. And but also I would say vote, make sure midterms are coming up. We have primary just around the corner. Voting starts next week for the primaries, midterms. This is a high stakes election, so certainly vote. And then last but not least, vote with your pocketbook. So
Come on.
yes, look up the companies that have associations with ICE that are helping fund the detention facilities that we're seeing pop up around the country, and, hit them where it hurts, and that's through their wallet.
Before we close out completely, we, of course, you remember, we have rapid fire questions. So we know yes, no, one word answers, just, how you feel. So, are residents required to open the door if ICE knocks?
No.
There you go.
One word. How would you describe the city's stance on ICE right now?
Complicated.
True or false? ICE can enter a home without a judicial warrant.
No. False.
Got
Quick
it.
tip. What is the first sentence someone should say if ICE approaches them?
Okay, the first thing they should say
is nothing.
I mean, I would say, am I being detained? Am I free to go?
Am I free to go? Yes. Okay. Is it safe for undocumented residents to call 911 in Austin?
Yes.
True or false? Peaceful protests are protected by the Constitution.
Yes. Hell yes.
Come on.
One thing protesters should bring to a demonstration.
A good sign.
Yes.
Water and their rage.
There you go.
Amen. One thing protesters should never do if they want to stay protected.
Oh, one thing they should never do. I mean, I would just say go towards escalating activity. You want to keep safe. And again, we have lots of law enforcement agencies operating in our city, and we know that some of them are not operating with the best interests of community safety.
Yes or no? Can local police ask about immigration status during a protest?
So this one's there's a caveat. So what we have, they can ask for immigration status, but they also, if they do decide to ask, they have to inform the individual that they are not required to provide a response to it. And the police officer then has to document that they made the immigration inquiry.
Got it.
Finish this sentence. You always have the right to remain
silent.
Yes. All right. So just some lighthearted ones before we finish us out. So coffee or is it cafecito? Before a long city council meeting.
Cafecito. Let's go.
Phone call or text. How should residents reach their council member when they're concerned?
I would say phone call, email, social media. My office line is always open, 512-978-2102. And we're very active on social media. We respond. Any email that comes into our office, we read every single one of them and we respond. So certainly engage with your elected officials.
All right. So what's one myth about ICE you wish would disappear right now?
that they're only going after so-called criminals. We
That's
know
real.
that 97% of the individuals being detained by ICE are not criminals, do not have criminal records, and they're also detaining American citizens.
Yes.
One thing that allies outside the Hispanic community can do today that will actually help out and make an impact.
Call their U.S. senator and congressman.
Yes. And last but not least, finish the sentence. Our city is strongest when?
We stand together.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, now we close out?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. We want to thank Councilmember Fuentes for joining us today and for taking the time to speak directly to the concerns of our community here on the Grapevine Talk. Our goal is always to make sure our listeners walk away with being informed, some news they can use, not being afraid. And remember, every person in this city has rights. The right to remain silent, the right to ask for a warrant, a judicial warrant, the right to protest peacefully, right to have counsel, and the right to seek help when those rights are violated. To our Hispanic listeners and our mixed status families, you are not invisible and your voices do truly matter. To our allies across Black, Brown, and all communities, real support means staying informed, showing up responsibly, and protecting one another and protecting yourself. We encourage everyone listening to save trusted resources, talk with your families and about your rights, and continue engaging with local leaders like Councilwoman Fuentes beyond today's conversation.
All right, so Ms. Fuentes, any social media that people should follow?
Yes,
And
so
how
they can
do we
stay
get in,
plugged
Yes.
in.
How do we get in contact with you? Because I know you said the email, phone call, and social media were the 3 ways to get in touch with you.
That's right. So on Instagram, it's at Vanessa FORATX, Vanessa 4ATX.
And if you're not following her on Instagram, you are missing out, okay? Not only is it funny, it's educational, and then you get to learn about literally anything that you're like involved in. It's so good.
We post a lot. We're very active.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you run through the socials one more time?
Vanessa 4ATX, and that's on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and TikTok.
Got it.
And honestly, really not so much Twitter. I mean, X. So, there's
Yes.
that.
And also, you can follow the Grapevine Talk for the latest episode, interviews, and of course, like you said earlier, news you can use. So this is the Grapevine Talk, where we connect the dots, uplift our community, and of course, keep the conversations going. So catch us every Friday live at 12 noon on KAZI 88.7 FM or online for other conversations like this and more. So until then, bye, Austin.
Bye, Austin.